The icy wind cut through the pre-dawn darkness like a blade, and Marcus Chen pulled his daughter closer as they waited at the deserted bus stop. 6-year-old Emma shivered despite her puffy winter coat, her small hand clutching his as frost formed. Delicate patterns on the shelter's glass walls. Marcus checked his watch, 5:47 a.m. The bus was late again, and he'd already be cutting it close to drop. Emma at early care before his shift at the warehouse began. Single parenthood meant these brutal early mornings, meant choosing between paying the heating bill and buying Emma new shoes, meant collapsing into bed each night, too exhausted to even dream. But when Emma looked up at him with those trusting brown eyes so much like her mother's, Marcus knew he'd weather 1,000 frozen mornings if it meant keeping her safe, fed and loved. That's when he noticed the figure huddled on the bench. At first, Marcus thought it was just a pile of discarded blankets, but then he saw her, a woman, maybe in her 40s, curled into herself against the merciless cold. She wore only a thin blazer over what looked like business clothes, completely inadequate for the 15-degree weather. Her lips had taken on a bluish tinge, and her whole body trembled with violent shivers. No hat, no gloves, no scarf. She looked like she'd stepped out of an office building and straight into an Arctic tundra. "Daddy, is that lady okay?" Emma whispered, her voice small and worried. Marcus's heart clenched. He'd seen homeless people before. This city was full of them. But something about this woman struck him differently. She wasn't asking for money or holding a cardboard sign. She just sat there, arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing with a glazed expression that spoke of shock or trauma or both. "I don't know, sweetheart," Marcus said quietly. He glanced down at his own coat, a thick, insulated parka he'd splurged on last winter after a particularly brutal cold snap had left him sick for a week. It was one of his few good possessions, probably the warmest thing he owned. He thought about the bills stacked on his kitchen counter, about the hole forming in Emma's sneakers, about the fact that replacing this coat would mean eating rice and beans for 2 months. Emma tugged his hand. "She's really cold, Daddy. Look, she's shaking." The woman's trembling had intensified. Hypothermia, Marcus thought. He'd learned about it in a first aid training at work. Confusion, slurred speech, loss of coordination, and if untreated, much worse. The nearest hospital was miles away, and he had no car. The bus still hadn't appeared on the horizon. Marcus made his decision in that instant, the way he'd made every important decision since becoming a single father, by asking himself what kind of man he wanted Emma to see, what kind of world he wanted to build for her through his actions. "Here, can you hold my bag?" he asked Emma, handing her his lunch cooler. Then he walked over to the bench and gently touched the woman's shoulder. She flinched, her eyes focusing on him with difficulty. Ma'am, you're going to freeze out here. Please take this." Marcus shrugged off his parka, feeling the cold immediately bite through his thin work shirt. He draped the coat carefully around the woman's shoulders. She looked up at him, confusion crossing her face. What? No, I can't." Her words came out slurred, thick. "Definitely hypothermia." "Please," Marcus said firmly but kindly. "You need it more than I do right now. There's a shelter about 4 blocks that way." He pointed down the street. "But if you can't make it, there's a 24-hour diner just around that corner. Get inside somewhere warm, okay?" The woman pulled the coat tighter around herself, and some clarity seemed to return to her eyes. She studied Marcus's face for a long moment, then looked past him to where Emma stood watching, concern evident in the little girl's expression. "Your daughter?" the woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, ma'am." "And you're giving me your coat?" It wasn't quite a question, more like she was trying to process an impossible equation. Marcus smiled, though his teeth had already started chattering. "It's just a coat." "You need it. Please get warm." He heard the distant rumble of the bus, approaching, and gently squeezed the woman's shoulder. "Take care of yourself." He returned to Emma, who immediately wrapped her small arms around his waist. "That was really nice, Daddy," she said. "That's what we do, Em. We help people when they need it." Marcus tried to keep his voice steady, but the cold was already seeping deep into his bones. The bus pulled up and he lifted Emma onto the steps, flashing his pass to the driver. As they found seats near the heater, Emma pressed against him, trying to share her warmth. Through the window, Marcus caught one last glimpse of the woman on the bench. She was standing now, his parka wrapped around her, watching the bus pull away. There was something in her expression he couldn't quite read. Shock, maybe, or disbelief. Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Marcus forgot about the encounter almost immediately. The day swallowed him whole, dropping Emma off, rushing to the warehouse, unloading trucks for 9 hours straight, picking up Emma, helping with homework, making dinner, bedtime stories. By the time he collapsed into bed, he'd developed a nasty cough from spending the day in cold storage units without proper outerwear. But he'd get paid Friday, and maybe he could find a decent used coat at the thrift store over the weekend. 3 weeks passed. Marcus's cough worsened despite the cheap coat he'd found for $20. Emma brought home a notice from school. They were looking for volunteers for an upcoming career day. Marcus wanted to participate, but the timing conflicted with his warehouse shift, and missing work meant missing pay they couldn't afford to lose. Then, on a Tuesday morning, Marcus received an email that made his heart stop. The warehouse was closing. Corporate restructuring, the message said. All employees would be let go in 30 days. They'd receive 2 weeks' severance pay, barely, enough to cover 1 month's rent. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, staring at his laptop screen, trying not to panic. He'd been poor before, had survived on next to nothing, but Emma changed everything. She needed stability, needed to stay in her school with her friends, needed to not worry about whether they'd have a home next month. He spent his lunch breaks applying to every job he could find, retail, delivery, janitorial, anything. But without a college degree and with limited availability due to Emma's schedule, his options were scarce. The rejections piled up like snow in a blizzard. 2 weeks before his last day at the warehouse, Marcus received a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, probably spam, but something made him pick up. "Is this Marcus Chen?" A professional female voice, crisp and businesslike. "Yes, speaking." "Mr. Chen, this is Jennifer Wade from Hartwell Industries. We received your application for our logistics coordinator position, and we'd like to invite you for an interview. Would Thursday at 2 p.m. work for you?" Marcus's mind raced. Hartwell Industries. He'd applied there on a whim, never expecting to hear back. They were one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the state, with a reputation for treating employees well. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much." Thursday arrived. Marcus borrowed a tie from his neighbor, pressed his only dress shirt, and took a half-day off work he couldn't afford. Emma stayed with his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who refused payment as always, bless her. Hartwell Industries occupied a gleaming downtown building that made Marcus feel small and out of place. The lobby alone probably cost more than he'd earn in 5 years. He checked in with reception, his palms sweating despite the cold. "Mr. Chen, please follow me." A young woman in a sharp suit led him through corridors, lined with photos of the company's history, past conference rooms with glass walls, to an elevator that climbed to the top floor. "Ms. Wade will see you in her office." Marcus's nervousness intensified. The office door opened, and he stepped inside a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city. Behind an enormous desk sat a woman in an elegant business suit, her dark hair pulled back, reviewing a file. She looked up, and Marcus's breath caught. It was her, the woman from the bus stop. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something Marcus couldn't identify. She stood, extending her hand. "Mr. Chen, please sit down." Marcus shook her hand, his mind spinning. Ms. Wade, I didn't realize that I was the homeless woman who took your coat." She smiled, but there was pain behind it. "I wasn't homeless, Mr. Chen, though I probably looked it that morning." She gestured for him to sit, then settled back into her chair. 3 weeks ago, I had just arrived in this city for the first time. I was scheduled to take over as CEO of Hartwell Industries the following Monday, a promotion I'd worked 20 years to achieve. I flew in late the night before, checked into my hotel, and decided to take a walk to clear my head. I've always processed stress better in motion. Jennifer Wade paused, her fingers drumming on the desk. I wasn't paying attention. Someone grabbed my purse, had my phone, wallet, hotel key, everything. It happened so fast. I tried to chase them, got completely turned around, and by the time I stopped I had no idea where I was. No phone to call for help, no money for a taxi. I walked for hours in the cold, getting more disoriented, until I couldn't feel my fingers or toes anymore. I sat down at that bus stop thinking I'd just rest for a minute, and then I couldn't seem to get up again. Everything felt fuzzy and far away. She looked directly at Marcus, and then you appeared. You and your daughter. You took one look at a stranger and gave me the coat off your back without hesitation. Do you understand how rare that is, Mr. Chen? I've worked in corporate America for 2 decades. I've seen people step over colleagues to climb the ladder, watched people ignore others' suffering if it didn't benefit them. And here you were, clearly struggling yourself. I could see it in your worn clothes, in the way you counted change for the bus, and you still gave. Marcus didn't know what to say. Anyone would have... No, Jennifer's voice was firm. They wouldn't have. I sat at that bus stop for over an hour before you arrived. 7 people walked past me. 7. Not one stopped. Not one offered help. She opened a drawer and pulled out his parka, clean and neatly folded. I had this dry cleaned. I've been carrying it around, hoping I'd find a way to return it and thank you properly. You didn't need to. Marcus started, but she held up a hand. I looked into you, Mr. Chen. I hope you don't think that's invasive. But when I discovered you'd applied here, I wanted to understand who you were. Single father, working a warehouse job, always on time, never complained, well-liked by colleagues. You volunteer at your daughter's school despite working full-time. You organize donations for families in need in your apartment building. You give and give and give, even when you have almost nothing. Tears pricked Marcus's eyes. He wasn't used to being seen, really seen. Jennifer stood and walked around the desk. The logistics coordinator position is yours if you want it. It pays $65,000 a year with full benefits, including health insurance for you and Emma. The hours are 9 to 5, no weekends. There's tuition assistance if you want to pursue further education. And we have on-site childcare that costs significantly less than most centers. Marcus's throat closed. $65,000. Health insurance. Normal hours that meant tucking Emma into bed every night, helping with homework, being present. It felt like a dream, too good to be real. But, Jennifer continued, I'm also offering you something else. A chance to help me build something. I've been CEO for 3 weeks now, and I'm learning that Hartwell has lost its way. We prioritize profits over people. We cut corners, treat employees as expendable. That morning at the bus stop, freezing and afraid, taught me something. We're all vulnerable. We're all one bad day away from needing help. And how we treat each other in those moments, that defines us. She returned to her desk and pulled out another file. I want to create a program, employee assistance, community outreach, ethical supply chains. I want this company to reflect the values you showed me that morning. But I can't do it alone. I need people who actually understand what it means to struggle, to sacrifice, to care about others. I need someone I can trust. Jennifer looked at him intently. So here's my real offer, Marcus. Start as logistics coordinator. Learn the business. And within a year, if you prove yourself, which I believe you will, I want you on my executive team, heading our new corporate responsibility division. I'll sponsor your education, provide mentorship, whatever you need. Because that morning, you invested in another human being with no expectation of return. Now I want to invest in you. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't process. This kind of thing didn't happen to people like him. Why? He finally whispered. Why me? Jennifer smiled, genuine warmth reaching her eyes. Because character matters, Marcus. Skills can be taught. Integrity can't. You have something most people spend their whole lives never finding, the ability to see others' humanity even when it costs you something. That's worth more than any MBA. She slid a folder across the desk. Take the evening, read the offer, think about it, discuss it with Emma if you want. But know this, that coat you gave me that morning, it saved my life. And now I'd like the chance to change yours if you'll let me. Marcus took the folder with shaking hands. Inside was a formal offer letter, benefits documentation, and a note in Jennifer's handwriting. Kindness is never wasted. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters. That evening, Marcus sat with Emma at their tiny kitchen table, the offer letter spread between them. He'd explained everything: the bus stop, the coat, Ms. Wade, the job. Emma studied the papers seriously, her small face scrunched in concentration. Finally, she looked up. "Daddy, does this mean you won't be so tired all the time?" Marcus's heart broke and healed simultaneously. "Yeah, baby, I think it does." "Then you should say yes." Emma nodded decisively. "Because you help people, and now someone's helping you. That's how it's supposed to work, right?" From the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. He pulled Emma into a fierce hug, tears finally spilling over. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a Hartwell Industries conference room, presenting the preliminary framework for the Hartwell Community Initiative to the Board of Directors. Jennifer sat at the head of the table, and when he finished, she was the first to stand and applaud. The program launched 3 months after that. Employee assistance funds, partnerships with homeless shelters, ethical supply chain audits, living wages for all workers. Marcus had found his calling, and more than that, he'd found proof that the values he'd tried to teach Emma actually mattered in the real world. On the anniversary of that frozen morning, Marcus visited the same bus stop with Emma and Jennifer. They'd brought coats, dozens of them, purchased with Hartwell funds, and distributed them to anyone who needed one. As Marcus handed a warm jacket to an elderly man with grateful eyes, he felt Emma slip her hand into his. "I'm proud of you, Daddy," she whispered. Marcus looked at his daughter, at Jennifer working alongside them, at the pile of coats waiting to warm cold bodies, and smiled. He'd started with nothing but a simple act of human decency, expecting nothing in return. And somehow, impossibly, it had transformed everything. Because that's the thing about kindness. You never know where it might lead, whose life it might save, or how it might come back to you when you need it most. Sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest ripples. Sometimes giving away your coat on a frozen morning is just the beginning of the story, not the end. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing really does matter.